Hey everyone. So we've got some here in the Zoom and a lot of people, not a lot, but we've got people in the live stream as well. Thank you all for coming to our. Hey everyone. So we've got some here. Wait one second, I have to do a tech check. This is my first attempt to do a panel while live streaming, so bear with me. Welcome to our Novice Recruitment and Retention panel. I'm hoping in this year to do several panels throughout the year about issues that are kind of high priority for the college policy debate community, and the one that's both close to my heart and I think really important for the development or even like sustainability of debate in general is novice debate. As numbers decline in high school, I think novice becomes even more important for our ability to stay strong and large activity for people to participate in. So I reached out to several colleagues who have had strong programs over the past several years, and my hope is that we can talk about what each program does to either maintain participation through things like retention, but also that first step, which is to get students in the door. So my order of speakers is just going to be in the order that Zoom shows me. So first we'll have Brian DeLong from Indiana, and then David Kremhelwick from Minnesota, and then Patrick Waldinger from Miami, Rob Klass from Houston, Ryan Galloway from Samford, Will Baker from NYU, and Armand Sreblins from Cornell. And I'll go last. And afterwards, we'll have time for people in the audience to ask any questions. I know that the universities we have represented are very different in many cases. We have some state universities, but also some non-state universities. So I think that gives different perspectives for those who might have a specific program need. So with that in mind, I've told each panelist that they cannot speak for longer than 5 minutes, and take it away, Brian.
Thank you, Jackie, for putting this together. First thing is you have to make novice recruitment a priority, and a priority for your team as well as the way that you act as a director. It's also just important in terms of your relationship with your campus. I think novice recruitment is proof positive of the concept that debate can have significant academic achievement rewards attached to it. And in order to prove that, rather than bringing in, recruited students that have experience, you show that your program can have a direct impact on the success of students on campus. So first off, I would say recruit early and often. You have to prepare for chaos. The influx and outflux of students through the rotating door of a debate program often is pretty high. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but the goal is to get as many people through the door as possible. And then through attrition, hopefully you retain about 10%, at least in our experience at Indiana University. So one of the things that's interesting about IU is that we have about 40,000 students as a Big Ten institution. And so it's relatively easy for us to find people on campus that find the notion of debate appealing. We attend our student event fairs. I send out emails to any and all professors that teach anything that is relative to argumentation or communication across campus. And I retain a relationship with various entities on those campus to help amplify our recruitment message. When they show up for your first meeting of the year, which should be about the second week for us, at least, on campus, since we can't communicate with students before they arrive on campus. Make sure that you have your materials prepared. We've set up a Canvas page. Our institution uses Canvas as our online education program. And we have modules that are set up that include the basic steps of debate: flowing, what is a disadvantage, what is a criticism, how to write a 1AC, and access to a lot of readings. Now, I'll be frank, that doesn't mean that they're going to pay attention to any of that. but it at least gives a sense to the novices that this is a legitimate academic enterprise, and they're more likely to stay and stick with it, especially post-COVID environments. Have new students speak and compete as soon as possible. Okay, and I can't emphasize this enough. And it doesn't have to be at a tournament itself. We've had issues where we weren't able to travel some of our novices until early October, which is pretty late when competing against programs like James Madison or Liberty or elsewhere. But what we started doing was competitions with fellow peer programs or programs that had other novices midweek. And so we replaced our Wednesday night meetings with sparring events against other teams like Minnesota. And to be frank, this experiment over the last 3 years has proven to be pretty successful for our program in retaining students. Once you get these students to a tournament or you get them speaking, then it helps them figure out, is this something for them? Do they want to do this? Which increases the likelihood of retention of students that like it, and also kind of pushes those students out the door that eventually don't want it. It also reduces your cost. Rather than spending hotel money on a student that finds out they don't like the event within one round, within a few online debates, then you're able to test that concept, which I think helps out budgetarily. So, the last thing that I'll say, or I think I have maybe 1 minute remaining, make sure that when you do travel, that you do have the conversation about appropriate behavior with students. So, if people have not been in a team atmosphere before, toxic behaviors, unfortunately, during your first travel event, can result in the alienation of students that you do want, and potential retention of students that bring a toxic behaviors. And so I think it's important to set a standard. So the last thing, and I'll wrap it up, when I said make it a priority for yourself, these students need to know that you'll be there for them at any given time that meets their particular schedule. And so we have office hours with my graduate assistants and myself and my students that are constantly in that squad room. So if any student walks through the door and wants to join the team, they're going to meet one of our debaters, one of either myself or some of my students. And I tell my debaters that are a little bit older, that are in their second or third or fourth year, that quite honestly, they're the ones that these debaters want to hang out with. And so I press my older students a lot, and I tell them that they're ultimately the leaders of the program. I'm the old man that essentially, slides the credit card and everything else. But ultimately, they're the ones that are going to keep these students and bring them back. And so I put a lot of responsibility on the rest of the team to help with that recruitment in the end. And then finally, again, for my last comment, look, you're going to have some failures, but quite honestly, the success of Novice Debate is one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. It keeps my energy up. It helps me get through some of the downs that I have with my open teams, my JV teams, and I recruit throughout the course of the year. We even have a recruitment session, or we have in the past, at the very end of the season, so that we can get novices to start training in the summer over Zoom using that same academic material I referenced before on our Canvas page. You can always find somebody on campus. It just takes, the willingness, the effort to pound the pavement and find them. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. We'll have David go next.
I'm going to restart my timer and see if I can cover. I was muted. So we're a bit different than most of the programs represented in that Minnesota has a full service debate program. We do IEs and 2 different formats of debate. And I would guess that we onboard between 10 and 20 real novices a year across those different programs. And one of the variables that we have to deal with is that we start very late relative to most other schools. We start the Tuesday after Labor Day. And so the first novice tournament is the second weekend after school starts. I will say this isn't a possibility for everybody, but one of the things that has helped us more than anything else with novice recruitment is having an introduction to debate class which is integrated into the communication studies curriculum. We just get students that walk in and do it. And I'll be honest, it's given the kind of size of the student body we have and the strength of the local high school speech and debate community, we don't have to do a lot of recruiting to get students showing up. It's easy when you have 3 big NSDA districts and 40 some thousand undergrads. But getting the novices to stay, I think, takes some work. And I came up with 4, and some of these overlap with Brian's suggestions, a little bit of things to think about in retaining novices. One is, I think it's important for a team to have a culture that celebrates novice debate. And that means not only acknowledging the achievements of the novices, but kind of emphasizing the values of debate that are beyond getting a trophy at a tournament, doing mediocrely in the varsity division, et cetera. It also means, I think it's important for advanced students, and this is an expectation in our program, that the older debaters work with the younger debaters, and they also have the responsibility to make the team spaces a welcoming space for novices. It's a space that novices can feel like they can go into when they first join the team. Second is, I think there's a lot of value in having team-wide activities, whether it's a business meeting, a discussion about different elements of the topic, bringing in outside speaker, meeting with alumni, or a wide variety of other things, and making sure that the novices are fully integrated into those meetings. The varsity debaters see the novices at 6 p.m. Wednesday night meeting. That's been our meeting time for 15 years. And we break up into groups after the kind of business meeting and any group activities that we do. But the novices are there, they're present, they're part of the team. People can see them and get to know them. Because I think that, some people stay for the competition, some really like research or our policy wonks, but I think a lot of folks end up sticking with debate because of the people that they meet. Those could be people in their cohort, fellow novices. But oftentimes I've found that the novices that stick the stickiest, novices stick better when they strike up a friendship with other members of the team. Third, I think it's, and this goes without saying, but a lot of people don't do it, is you need to dedicate labor to novices, and that means face time with the boss. I know, I have experienced this in the course of my career. It is very tempting to look at the new grad student and guess what, you're the novice coach. And I certainly don't fault anybody that does that, but people judge you by your actions. And as a director, in most cases, you're the most important. You're the face of the program, at least institutionally, and people pick up on that. And so if you demonstrate that you think the novices are important by spending time with them, I think that there's value in that. That doesn't mean you're the argument coach for the novices. I do think that it's also a good place for alums who are interested in helping out to come back if they can volunteer an hour or 2 a week with the novices. We also have varsity debaters who've kind of burned out on competition, who find novice coaching to be extraordinarily rewarding. And then fourth, I think it's really important. I think this is just important from program building in general, but it's particularly applicable to novices, is to have multiple tracks of team participation for those novices. Tournament competition isn't for everybody. Our late start and geographic location means that there's a really steep learning curve for getting ready for novice tournaments, and it's a big time commitment for students that choose to go to those. Oftentimes our novices don't start until November, go to their first in-person tournament back when we did those until November, or even in January, but having opportunities for them to participate. We do an audience-centered form of debate that I think is a little more accessible for some folks. They participate in public debates, and then things like the scrimmages that Brian described, where they can get debate experience without having to make an enormous commitment. And that's 5.
Thanks, DCH. Next is Patrick.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you for setting this up. So, I'll talk a little bit about our program because I guess we're unique compared to the other two in the sense that we're a private university. The other difference, I think, is that we don't have scholarships for debate. So a lot of our debate team is novices because it's very hard for us to recruit, high school students that have experience to come in. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have some that kind of show up, but they aren't typically what we call recruits, where you kind of go out there. And I mentioned this kind of for two reasons. One, if we want to do policy debate, then Novice is very important for us because they are the people that need to do it. But two, we don't tend to usually have a lot of the older folks. Sometimes, if we train the novices and they move up to JV and varsity, those are the ones that can be mentors. But, it's very difficult if we don't have the scholarships to kind of have people there because, we have a small coaching staff too. So, it's Dave and I, and, it's not that we don't put in the time and the work working with the novices, but, again, I think what other people say is that having that kind of mentorship within the peers is really important, and it helps out a lot, and when we do have that, it's great and people do it, but it's something to kind of keep in mind that, if they need some sort of leadership there as it goes around. So how do we get students? We have this thing called Cane Fest. Basically, at the very beginning of the year, all the frosh are invited to the Bank United Center or whatever, where they play basketball, and all of the student groups are there. In fact, because we aren't technically a student group, we had to create a student group in order to be able to get a table there, because we aren't in, how the bureaucracy works. But either way, we get a lot of people there, and we know there's going to be attrition. I think Brian talked about this a lot, where you're going to have some people, kind of stay. So we try to have a few introductory sessions, usually on a Friday afternoon, and then one that's not, just to kind of get people involved. And we know that some people are going to, kind of just fall out from there. They kind of, signed up for everything. They go check it out. It's not their thing, whatever. They found some other group they like. That's cool. Okay. The other unique thing about our program is that we have competition within it. I think, well, I guess Minnesota, does have speech, but we do BP debate as well as policy. So, if people are interested in debate and they come and we kind of say, hey, here's policy, here's BP, we have to kind of compete on that level of people who are more interested in, having a different topic every time versus talking about antitrust, like every debate that they have. So, we have to kind of keep that in mind. And we've found a good division there, but that does kind of lead to some of the attrition that's there. We do have a class that's involved with debate. It's not set up as an intro. It's just sort of it's called COS 304, Intercollegiate Debate Theory and Practice. So that's kind of usually our meeting time. That can become problematic when, we don't have a lot of coaches and we have people that are parts of different divisions that are there that we're trying to coach up novices versus that. So I think kind of the office hours, the outside of that time that other people mentioned become really, really important. And, if so a novice comes at the beginning and they go, well, we can't meet on Wednesdays, we have a class, this was all set up, we try to accommodate that as much as we can, the effort that they put in. I want to emphasize, kind of getting them to debate early. I would love to get in on some of this internet stuff that's going on there, because we, for a while we knew that even if people like debate, they got to like the topic, they might not like the format, they might not like the travel. And so, early on when I got to Miami, we created this Sunshine State Showdown, where we tried to get all the debate schools in Florida, so we didn't have to get kids on a plane in order to see if they like it. And so now with the internet, I think, that's a good way to kind of, again, there'd be probably some attrition there, and you have people that go. One thing that we emphasize is that debate early and often, right? Because there are some people that might be hesitant, and even if they're doing practice, just say look, this topic is all year round. If you start in tournament 3, it may, you are behind. And so we always try to kind of encourage people to debate, even if they don't feel, because whoever feels that they're completely ready to debate, because, they're going to get further and further behind. People are going to start talking faster, and those kind of things. The last thing I'll say, because I only have a few seconds left, is online, not great for them. Recruitment, they don't want to sit in the room all day and not go outside for a while. And so if it's going to be online only and we're going to do those things, I don't know, we need to kind of rethink that. Maybe just one day things. They love that kind of stuff, just sort of like 2-3 rounds, that sort of thing. We had 8 debaters. I didn't even know we had 8 novices, or well, I guess they weren't all novices. We had 6 novices that went to ADA because we traveled for the first time in 2 years. So I really think that, we need to keep in mind that the way we do online, if we're going to continue to do it, also can, affect the attrition and the interest level. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next is Rob.
All right. I want to echo a lot of things that have been said earlier, which is, this is going to sound callous, but recruitment is good, but you have to be willing that people are going to leave. Attrition is just going to happen. And the worst thing that you can do yourself is look at attrition and be like, I have to stop it. And I think I also want to echo here the prior discussion, which is like novices need face-to-face time with a coach. One of the things that we do absolutely with everybody who joins the team is they have to have a one-on-one meeting with me. It's about a 30-minute meeting. We explain what the team is, and that means they know who I am, they know my background, they've talked to me, so the other coaching staff knows who they are, what they're doing. And we find that that goes a long way, especially because like my first year where I was physically in Houston, we'd have people just sort of like walking into the squad room and sort of joining the team by talking to their friends. And that was always kind of a disaster. I'm going to talk about retention because I think we've talked about a bunch about recruitment. And I want to sort of spin this for a second and say, one of the things that I found when I talk to people, other coaches who have issues with retention, is that they sort of view debate from the perspective of the debate insider and not from a college student. We have all drunk the Kool-Aid, right? We are all deeply, deeply invested in debate. We know what this is. We know how this operates. We know the benefits of this. But a student who's walking around and hears like, this is the most transformative thing that you can do in your life is going to hear that from 6 different organizations like fencing, mock trial, the radio station, whatever. And so what we need to do is think of this as how do we pitch it to a student who is joining the team we get in for a week or two, and how do we make a culture that makes them want to stay, and how do we make a community that makes them want to stay. And I think there are sort of 3 principles that I think are just crucial. The first is be nice. We have a very warped perspective of what is and isn't nice. I think a lot of this comes down to like debate is argumentative, and with people who've done high school debate or people who've done debate for 2 or 3 years, we have to be combative. That's how we test ideas. It's how we hone things down. It's how we make them better debaters, right? But if you are that sort of like combative and forceful with someone who doesn't know what debate is, you're an asshole, right? And they don't want to be around assholes. And so the answer is you got to be nice. You got to be willing to like sort of put that on the back burner, explain how it operates, really just like break it down and do the basics, and always be patient with them. You've got to have infinite patience with the novices. And if you can give them that and they understand that this is something that you will give them, they will take everything they can and they will deploy it inside rounds. And I think that's amazing. The second sort of thing I will say is be respectful. And I'm going to tell a quick little story here. I was working at a program years back, I'm not going to say how long back, and the director of debate, I was coaching novices, we were bringing them in, and we had an attrition rate of about 50%, and the director of debate came in, sat me down and said, you got to stop telling them about spreading, because it scares them. And the result was we brought a bunch of novices, I think, to the Vermont tournament, and they all disappeared on us after the tournament because they didn't know what the spreading was, and they basically viewed me as a liar who had hid an important part of debate from them. And so we have to respect them. You have to look at them and say, this is going to be time, this is going to take up time, it's going to take up effort. And you have to tell them, like, we're going to make demands on you, and that's okay. Right. And debaters, turns out, novices, if you tell them, we make this part of our pitch, like you're going to be spending up to 20 hours a week on debate by the end of the year. And if you're upfront with them, you're honest with them, that does it. If you tell them there's going to be a lot of work, that will do it. It's an appeal. And it really is a strong sell, because then they can look at like the radio station or whatever else and like, they're not going to get that. And they're not going to get that sort of upfront. This is the demand. And the final thing for retention, I would say, is there has to be a path forward. Novice cannot be the end point of their career. The last in-person year, I judged a novice debate, and this kid comes up back to me after the round. It's like, love debate, but I'm sad it's, this is it. And he was at a big program. He's like, yeah, I'm a novice. There's, they told me basically if I try to compete as a varsity debater, there's not going to be room for me. There's no real JV team here. So this is it. And the answer is like, yeah, of course they're going to leave then. And I think that a lot of coaches, a lot of programs sort of view the NDT as a be all and end all, or view sort of high-tier varsity success as a be all and end all. And do you look at novices as being incapable of reaching that? And one, I just don't think it's accurate. I think D'Lo and Indiana brought a novice to the NDT this year, which good job, by the way. But two, right, there is a path forward. Novices can become great varsity debaters. Novices can become great JV debaters. Novices can become good coaches, right? You have to have a path forward where you tell them this is something that can be in your future for the rest of your life or for the rest of your college career. Because if they don't think there's a future for the next 2 years, right, they're going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. And I don't blame them. Who would? So there has to be a path forward for them and something that they can latch onto and say, this is where I'm going to go. 20 seconds left. The other thing I'll say, the sort of as a fourth thing, it's unrelated to this, but tangential, is student chatter is good. We have a Microsoft Teams space that we use, and there was constant student chatter until the students made a Discord. And now anytime a novice joins, they get invited into the UH Discord. There are no coaches in there, but the students who are actively part of the team make sure the new students feel like there's a culture they're joining and feels like there's a community they're joining. And that does a long way to help novice debaters stick around. And that is my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next, we have Ryan.
Hi there. So I'm going to start by saying Stanford is different than a lot of the other universities here. We are private, we are Christian, we have about 4,500 undergraduates. So when Dilo said Indiana had something like 30,000 people, we're just a very different place. I'm going to talk about 3 recruiting strategies that have worked and then some of the retention strategies that we have. And my daughter has made me a sticker that says RG, so which is what my students call me. Okay. So recruiting strategies. The first and the best recruiting strategy we have is we are in touch with a freshman counselor who sends students that she thinks would be interested to the debate team. So a lot of places have connections with admissions, but Leslie Armstrong meets with a bunch of students and she sends students that she thinks would be interested in debate. And she knows enough about us to know what kind of students that we want. We want students that are driven, we want students that are smart, et cetera. And tapping into pre-law students is great for us. The fact that last year was a legal topic was actually really helpful because we told students we're going to be debating issues that you could debate in your career. Second is get information about what your alumni are doing, which will help with your recruiting materials. So in part of our recruiting material that we give to the students that Leslie meets with, we have what our alums have done and that they've gone to Georgetown Law, that they've gone to Alabama Law, that they've gone to, I'm forgetting a big one, Vanderbilt Law, Mariah went there, and talk to them about what their end path is at the end of debate and why this is important. And third, somebody already mentioned this, I think Rob mentioned this, once you get some novices, you'll grow pretty quickly because they will recruit their friends to debate with them, or they'll recruit their friends to be on the squad. When I was at Augustana, I started the year with a squad of 4 people. And once the novices started recruiting each other, I sat down at dinner one night and we had 12 people at the table. And I said, when did we become a big squad? I thought we were a small squad. Okay. Retention strategies that have worked for us. The first is get them involved in the social network first. Somebody mentioned this, but we're all debate geeks and we would do debate no matter what. But normal people aren't like that. Normal people do things because they're involved in a social network, because they have friends, because they get to do things with their friends, because they're going to hang out in the squad room with their friends, etc. And basically, we're not normal people. And we need to understand what normal people are like in order to get normal people to stick around. Second, get them debating something as soon as possible. And I think Patrick mentioned getting them to a tournament as soon as you can. So I've had debaters before that are perfectionists and don't want to go to the first tournament because they don't know everything. And you have to get them over that and say, you're going to go in without knowing everything. And I've always thought the best first tournament we could have for a novice is for them to lose in the finals. And the reason why is because that would give them a rival, someone to compete against, and someone to compare themselves to, that they would do well, but not win because then it might seem like it's too easy to do. Third, get them to invest in the team, use a foot in the door strategy. Have them judge PF at your high school tournament or judge rounds at your UDL. Right at the start of the year, I said, we have the goal this year of being the top 10 in the American Debate Association rankings. And 3 people after that meeting who came walked out and said, this is too serious for me. I don't want to do this. But the ones that stayed were the ones that really were committed and wanted to do things. And we show the rankings very frequently. And I make sure to point out, look, our varsity team contributed 20 points to the rankings. Our JVers contributed this much, and our novices contributed this much too. So they understand that they're part of a larger group and that their contributions really do matter. And I think Rob mentioned the future of novices. Well, we've had novices go to the NDT at Sanford, and so they can see that if they do this, they have the possibility of going to the NDT. And I'm sorry if that's a little too NDT centric, but that's the history of our squad. And they get to see, hey, I can stay and do some big things in this. Fourth, get them cutting evidence as soon as possible. If they win with their own card, you have no idea how important that is. They will make further contributions. If they win with a card that one of their friends cut and their friend knows that they won because of that, then that's a big deal. We had each of the novices who went to ADA do a case nag, and they were very favorite. When we would win on one of their case nags, we would make sure that they knew that it was because of the contribution they had made. And last, and I think I mentioned this before, don't forget that they are people. So we do snack bags. We let them go to breakfast. So at ADA Nationals, which was our first in-person tournament with our novices, Sawyer was like, come on, we got to get to the tournament. I'm like, Sawyer, normal people want to eat breakfast. Let them eat breakfast, and then we'll go. We go out for ice cream in the evening. We do things to help them control nerves, because we forget that normal people get nervous when they speak in public, and we're going to have to calm them down before debates. Make the tournaments as humane as possible. We celebrate birthdays. We have parties for success. When the novices do well or anyone does well, we have a lot of cake on the Sanford squad. We did team outings, which were really helpful. Someone else mentioned that. We went to Topgolf this year. We took a lot of pictures that we put on the Instagram, got to see people out of their element. And then the novices can succeed at something better than the varsity people, which is rare for them because they're used to being on the bottom of the totem pole. But then all of a sudden, hey, I'm better at golf than you, so I fit here too. I remember staying up until 12:30 a.m. with Abby McKibben, on Zoom, trying to convince her that she could go to the first tournament and she could do this. And she was one of our debaters who won ADA Novice Nationals this year. So you have to remember that they're people and we aren't normal people. And we have to remember to treat novices like normal people, at least for a while, until they get integrated into our crazy system. And then they'll be just fine.
Thank you, Ryan. Next is Will.
Two quick strategies on retention, then I'm going to move to the, hey, we're not so brilliant, and talk about a couple of unsuccessful tactics as well, because I think that was part of our order. Both of these are culture-based. The first one is use your attrition to your advantage. What I mean by that is we actively survey and ask people questions, either through Google Forms or directly when they're leaving, and try to find out why did they leave after the first meeting, or why did they leave after a tournament? So we're not making assumptions about that. And so we can learn what makes people stay and what makes people leave, so we can make some changes that are data driven. Second, I think culture is also about the way we communicate about success and failures. A lot of times we have adjusted our messaging around definition of success when talking to novices at their first tournament. Did you ask 3 minutes worth of cross-X questions? Did you finish your 1AC? Did you learn anything from the judges' comments? There are a whole bunch of other success strategies that you can talk about besides winning and losing. The third one is put them in places of power, as Ryan was talking about. We do that specifically with debate. We make our open debaters do fluency drills, and we have a set of novices assigned to be judges for that. And they can stop them anytime they have uhs or verbalized pauses and make them start again. You can empower them in the debate format, and I would definitely suggest that as well. Two quick things that didn't go so well that I think folks might be helped by just hearing. The first one was my failure to understand information flows adequately. I was not thinking about that the modern student will go online and look for things about policy debate or CETA because that's how they respond and are interested. But a lot of that information is garbage, or it's varsity stuff that doesn't feel accessible to them, or it's people bad-mouthing formats who don't necessarily know what they're talking about. We've now accounted for that in our training materials, and we now talk about that and kind of give them helpful models so that they have that understanding. The second one is overestimating my own knowledge about why debate appeals to me or the motivations. Ryan's 100% right that we're not normal humans, and the world's changed since we debated in lots of ways. And so finding out about how your debaters are making decisions is really, really important. The only quick story I wanted to share on that was just one moment in which a debater told me that they stayed because I trusted them. This is a novice that has not won a lot of rounds. I have very little trust for, so I have no idea what they were talking about. They explained that I allowed them and their partner to help prep a team based on the flow because they had seen a team earlier in the tournament. That meant a huge amount to them and made them feel like a part of the team. Very important moment that I would not have ever understood. Was glad I asked.
Thank you so much, Will. And next we have Armand.
Okay, had to unmute myself. Okay, so I listed a bunch of things, but I'll just go over some things that maybe weren't covered or were covered in a slightly different way. So kind of taking something that Jackie had mentioned that stuck with me last summer when we had a similar kind of discussion is to definitely coach for what works at the students at your particular institution, not like some generic placeholder of debater in general. So when I first started at Cornell, I had this University of Southern California mindset. It's my alma mater. Debate is about cutting entire files. It's about evening debates for sure. Coursework was a casual afterthought because I was able to make Tuesday through Thursday classes for the most part. Then I go to Cornell and students are very stressed out about the high frequency of prelims that they have. They don't just have one midterm. Class schedules for them are very regimented. There's a high amount of other professional organizations that could attract them if they don't do debate. So what would retain them starts to become the question. And it's many things. It's like what Rob said in terms of be nice to them. It's also just recognizing that they want friends. They want to join an organization where they might have friends. So even if you have some peripheral novices who don't seem as adamantly interested in the activity, just their presence and their cheerfulness can be something that's a benefit to the more core dedicated debaters. And also, this is important for judges and coaches because sometimes coaches and judges slip into this idea that they're being methodical and that's good when they're just being mean, right? If you're just, I once had a judge for a novice that's a perfectly fine judge for varsity debate, but the typed RFD was just like a whole list of 20 things you did wrong. And the debater was almost in tears about this because they thought they did, in many ways, a kind of good job. So I think it's important to emphasize kind of like the subtle social skills in this information processing activity of, emotional awareness, knowing where the students are at, what makes them receptive to instruction, all that kind of stuff. What I'll also add is that it's important to have this narrative that novice debate is intrinsically valuable. And I really mean intrinsically valuable because what I often hear is novice debate is valuable because it's a trickle down of the awesome thing, which is NDT, elite, whatever debate. And as long as you're getting some, trickles of water of that great manna from heaven, then supposedly you're doing something okay. And what that does, it generates this mindset in novices of they're derivative, they're never necessarily good enough. The modern language would call it toxic. Nietzsche wrote about this with respect to idolation of gods and says it generates resentment. There's all kinds of icky feelings that come about from this. So I think it's very important to thread the needle between a healthy curiosity about advanced levels of debate. Like, yeah, it's good to look at case lists. It's good to watch a varsity debate, but don't have it with this feeling of total adulation and that you're not good enough. And then it's important to counter that narrative by emphasizing what really does make novice debate intrinsically valuable, because it is. And one of the reasons why is because it's a very sudden, steep learning curve of a whole variety of things that novices are learning, where if they're even doing things at 20% quality for any one of the 10 things they're supposed to all learn at once, that's really amazing and that's really good. The reality is with a lot of varsity debate, it's an amazing thing to behold to watch an elite, amazing varsity debate, but there's diminishing returns. It's just refinement of certain skills, a slightly better card, etc. So to kind of realize that is important. And then also when varsity debate is compared as an improved version or the best version of what novice debate can be, it papers over differences of how people come at debate, because varsity debaters, they maybe were in a high school that had a program, they maybe went to summer camps, they maybe even had tutors, You could have people that are transfer students from a community college or went to a high school that never even had debate before. They're fascinated by this activity. So why shut the door at them and say that this is this derivative thing where they're just going to do the half-assed version of what the awesome debaters do? It's not healthy. I guess what else will I add to this? Okay, quick note, I think structural debriefing after rounds is over. So anything you could do, whether it's dinner, lunchtime, or just a forced coffee conversation, to just get the students talking about the round. At first, they're going to say the judge sucks and they don't understand why anything happened they did. But if you have a kind of Socratic dialogue with it, or have them write in Discord like their own round report that you follow up on with the conversation, it generates a kind of mindfulness of debate. The last thing I'll just say it, I don't think the packet is healthy for novice debate. It becomes a syllabus that limits what students can research and explore. I've heard novice debates complain 2 to 3 tournaments in that they're sick of talking about the same cards. I think that the packet stuff is written under time constraints where people are like, they generate something that's good and kind of good, but it doesn't really satiate interest over the long term. So I think the door should just be unleashed. And like somebody earlier said, novices find great value in winning a round with a card that they cut themselves.
Thank you, Armand. So over the process of novice coaching, the one thing that I've thought is the most important is to be willing to set aside your own ego. So when I first started recruiting, I had all of these things that I thought were great ideas of how to get all of these people into the door, and half of them just didn't work. So when I was recruited as a novice, it was because I received a letter in the mail from Liberty inviting me to be on the team. And I thought a letter in the mail to me as a senior in college, this is so important. And that was really cool for me. But when the first couple years of being at Mason, when I was sending out letters in the mail, nobody responded. And I was just why is no one replying to these letters? This was how I got recruited. And when we got the novices in the door, they were just we threw out half of the things we received from Mason because we just got too many things in the mail, or they just didn't see it, anything like that. The thing that actually did work was when they met actual debaters. And it wasn't when they met me, which made me feel like I wasn't good enough to recruit them. It was when debaters went into the middle of campus with a table and started pulling people in. They're like, come on, talk to us. Do you want to debate with us? That sort of thing, because they see students who are on the team. So that's the first thing. Be willing to recognize what fails and don't just keep doing it because you feel like it should have worked the first time. So that's something that we've done, at least I have, is my novices in many ways are almost like my guinea pigs every year of adding new ideas to see what sticks. And then I keep the ones that stick and I get rid of the ones that don't. So at this point in time, the way that we bring students in is in April, I email admissions and I ask for a Excel doc with the contact information of every single admitted freshman. At first, I asked for just the ones who I identified they're interested in debate or something like that. But that list only had 50 kids on it. And then we heard back from maybe one. But once we got the whole list, and granted Mason's large. So this year, for example, our admitted freshman list is 4,455 students. And I emailed all of them. I actually did that today. So you might hear some dings as I'm talking. It's because so far we've already heard back from 50 kids. So that's the first thing that I think is a really good tactic, is to open up the net, even to people you wouldn't expect would be interested in debate, because that's how you're going to recruit a lot of people, but also a diverse number, or diverse set of novices. Whereas when I used to only message the government department, et cetera, we were not seeing a lot of novice diversity. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, being willing to set aside your ego and how you teach, because I think this is the thing about recruitment or retention. So when I started with coaching novices, I did it exactly the way Heather Hall did for me, which after we've talked a little bit, she's even changed that now. But I thought, it worked for me, it's going to work for them. And it was weekends, boot camp of me talking at them, and the numbers very quickly eliminated. People got bored because we don't realize how long we're talking. I just looked at the clock. I've already talked for 4 minutes and I feel like I just started, right? So those amounts of talking at novices was usually not helpful. It's also like something that I found was not helpful for them even remembering what you said. So this year, kind of new tactic I had was for us to have a day that they came in where they saw the topic and they just worked together, brainstormed, found evidence, like they didn't even know what a speech looked like yet. And I was like, put together speeches. What do you think it should be? Find things together. They on their own separated into little research groups. And they're like, we care about big pharma. And another one's like, I don't care about that at all. They're like, I care about like the agriculture industry. And they all started separating to think about like big corporations. And if you notice, Mason's Novice Ave kind of sucked this year, but it was the one they wanted. They were really proud of it. They went on the case list to steal cards that fit with the evidence that they wanted to use. And I found that that was also a really successful model. So I think my biggest recommendation is be willing to change tactics, identify what works, keep those things in mind. And that's usually the way that we attempt to get big numbers. First is messaging everyone on campus. Second is set up a table that usually gets a ton of kids for us. And then to keep them in mind, have them realize what debate is for them, because that's going to be specialized based upon the individual debater. And I think a lot of things that have been discussed already are really important, like making sure that the novices have connections to the varsity kids. One thing that we actually make the varsity kids do, our novices don't know this, and I hope no one watches this video, is that we make all of our varsity kids go watch one of our novice team's elim debates, like their first elim. So when our novices have their first elim, they just see all these older debaters on the team, and they think that the older debaters did that of their own accord. And it makes them feel really special, like, oh, my mentor wanted to come watch me debate. I made them, but they think it was because that debater really wanted to see them shine. And a lot of times the varsity kids will then leave and pull them aside afterwards and talk to them about the debate, what went wrong, what went well. And I think that really helps as well. Heather Hall could not join us today because of a prior commitment, but she did just want me to isolate a couple things. The first is to take use of online resources that we have now that we didn't have in the past. And she echoed what a couple others have already said, which is you can recruit earlier and actually have Zoom meetings over the summer with novices, which is something that we used to not really know was a possibility before Zoom came in mind. And the second thing that she said is something a lot of people also have said, which is recruit early, but also often. So she said she started having a mid-year recruitment session to bring debaters in for the spring. So I think those are things that we can keep in mind, is that we don't have to lock the doors after like August 29th or something like that. We can keep them open, because even if they don't debate for that year, maybe even just being on the team and then debating the next year can keep them around. So I think that that was it for our presenters. So what I wanted to do now is open the floor for any questions people might have, if to a specific presenter or not.
Jackie, so I was thinking it was interesting about emailing every admitted freshman. Did you get any pushback on like privacy concerns or anything like that?
That's a great question. I thought that they were going to say that to me, because they used to just give me the doc with it interested. And this year I emailed them and was like, I want it all. And he just sent it to me.
That's
That was it.
impressive. All right.
Yeah. So I think if like the reason was I started with like my title and like was really stern and was like, we need this for recruiting. And I CC'd the dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. If you have a great working relationship with the college or department that you're in, if they see that person on emails, it's more likely than not that they'll give it to you. And you can also add in there some sort of assertion that you won't share the data with anyone besides yourself. Like, I didn't even do that, and they didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know, because I'm like, we're both large public universities.
It's worth a shot.
They're just gonna hand me this information, but you're right, I might as well ask.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, like Vic said in the chat, universities have this, and if it's needed for a specific thing, they should be able to send it. Armand's.
I've got a question for Will Baker, because you mentioned something that piqued my interest, which is students, taking upon themselves to go research something quickly on the internet about the nature of debate and then getting the wrong information. I mean, I've seen this happen. My classic example is a student trying to learn modern counterplan theory, and then they Google something that tells them it must be topical and mutually exclusive. But I'm sure there's other examples that exist as well. And I'm wondering, like, how do you remedy that? And is it possible for us as a community to sort of like either on the CETA website or the ADA website kind of crowdsource some vetted best articles, like greatest hits of, these articles that make sense instead of people, making stuff up?
I hate to give CETA more work, but yes, the notion of crowdsourcing articles would be helpful. The two things that I would add to that are, first, for this population, the more we can do actual videos, the better, because short videos is really kind of a powerful medium for them, and it's kind of what they're used to from YouTube. And second, we've developed a bunch of anticipatory stories. In other words, we tell them, hey, there's a lot of bad stuff out there that's not going to tell you what's going on. Here's how we're going to give you the information that you need so you can assess whether or not this is something that you want to do. And in combination with what Rob was saying before, we try to be very upfront and honest. It's like, you're not going into varsity debate this week. You're not going to have to do any of those things. And those rounds don't sound like yours. Let us show you what your rounds will sound like, and then you can decide what makes sense.
I really like that last thing that you said, Will, about reassuring that top level debate is not what they should anticipate. I remember when I was a novice, I thought that I would be debating everyone. So like people with 4 years of experience, and it was very reassuring to know that that was not the case. I know this year, something that we did, usually we try to send teams to the first tournament, but we didn't have them yet. So once the first tournament came around, what we did instead was we watched like all of the prelims and like broadcasted them on a big screen. And the debaters being able to see what novice debate actually is at the first tournament was very reassuring for them. And they like tore those debates apart. They were just like, they didn't use all their speech time. You told us we had to do that, like all that sort of stuff. And it was really helpful in comparison to maybe even watching demo debates that they are supposed to look like almost perfect but slow versions of debate. That was in many cases a little frightening for them because it was very organized when novice debate is not.
It also ties back to what Ryan said about being normal humans. Several of my international students and also students from other things said there are a lot of activities where people aren't separated by experience and you compete against everyone. So that's the norm for where some of them are coming from as well.
Very true. Something that you all had mentioned that I did want to kind of put a plug in for, and I was trying to like open it to share screen, but I am a little not technologically competent. So I know that some of you have probably seen the ad that I put on Facebook about the Novice CETA lecture series that we're doing this coming season. And if you want to do one, I still have a lot of slots that are open. And the goal is just every week is a different like important novice topic. So one of the first lectures is going to be given by Young Kwan, and it's a lecture on how to research. I think we all know that Young Kwan's probably one of the better researchers in the country. So he's going to be teaching these novices good things. And kind of in conjunction with that, I know there have been a lot of attempts to do this, and it's just a lot of work is putting together all of those resources. Is the goal that along those videos, the person who gives the lecture can find what they think is the best article that has been written on that topic. So I think that means by the end of the season, we'll have a full repository of things. So if you're interested in giving one of those lectures, please let me know. Okay, any other questions? Sorry, I was reading the chat for a second.
I just want to say that I'm willing to share materials, something that I created over time, and I know Delo's got a lot of these too, is what I call the College of Debate Knowledge, which is just every week I would sit down with the novices at the end of our meeting and go over a topic like disadvantages or counterpoints or whatever. And it was the way I would do it. I've got PowerPoints for all these, but it was very informal. We would sit around in a circle and we would share snacks and I would talk about the issue at hand, but a lot of them learned a lot of what they needed to know for the first tournament from those things. And I'm happy to share the College of Debate Knowledge with anyone who wants it.
Awesome. Any other questions or thoughts?
Go ahead.
This isn't very profound, but no one said it, and I ran out of time. Was just some of us do teach classes outside of just like policy debate. It might even be public speaking or whatever. Recruit some kids from there. You know, some of the kids that are willing to put in the work and are really smart, and they may not even have known about debate or think they can't do it. I think, you know, just putting in a plug for them, you know, can get people there that, you know, are going to be good. So keep that in mind.
So I just put a version of this in the chat, but I want to say one of the things I think is super important if we're going to talk about. So I'll tell you, like my debate story involves being dragooned into a tournament from a class, not knowing what a card was, and Joe Patrice was my first judge, and he was willing to sit and talk to me for 45 minutes about the round, or I think 30 minutes about the round. And that was, I mean, obviously life-changing. And I think that this is something that I think gets lost in other forms of the activity. So for instance, for like a varsity debater, I would very much prefer a very long written up ballot from most judges, because I think, oh, hello, there's a baby in the channel. Hello, baby.
She was very curious. I didn't mean to derail the conversation. I just added.
No. Wonderful to see her. She looks, she what, a year and a half now?
Almost 2, so very good.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, sorry, distracted. But for varsity debaters, I would very much like a very long, like written ballot. But for novices, the things that they get out of this is immediate oral feedback, question and answer, and really just like on point, like patient discussion of what happened in the round, and a judge walking through things. And I think that there's a bunch of impulses to like, we need to cram more debate rounds in or shorten round times or sort of get the judges out of rounds. And I really think that that's a bad impulse and a really toxic thing for novices. They need to have time, they need to have space to grow, and they need to be able to feel comfortable talking to the judges, because one, it gives them feedback, but two, it also makes a community, right? Knowing that these judges are not like some sort of like impenetrable adult who sits behind, the curtain from the Wizard of Oz, but is in fact another coach who wants to help them, who wants to see them succeed, and who wants to see them grow, makes them feel loved, makes them feel like they belong. And I mean, I think everyone knows debaters who have judges that they just really love, they look forward to having in the back of the room, and they really care about. That needs to be, the only way you can have it is through question and answer and discourse with novices.
I do want to say that one reform, which is on the ADA ballot, and that I know Adrian was very big in pushing last year, which was very helpful for our novices, is written ballots. I'm not disagreeing with what Rob says. I think the educators should spend a lot of time with the novices. And to be frank, I think a lot of our young people in particular need to learn how to give feedback to novices, because you need to sandwich it and you need to be positive and not just be negative in your feedback. But getting back to my original point, those written ballots were phenomenal, because I was able to sit down with my novices and say, okay, let's talk about this round. The judge said this, the judge said this, because to be frank, Novices are not very good about giving feedback about what the judge actually said. And it's because they're so young. It's not because they're not smart people. It's because they're so young that they don't understand all of the details of what's happening. But being able to see what the judge said and sit down with them about those kinds of things is very helpful. So I hope people vote for the ADA amendment that encourages written comments on the ballots.
I want to echo that because I've found that it's helpful to know if a novice got like a 27 because the judge just gives novices lower speaker points, or because our novice like forgot to ask cross-ex questions, because that both helps talking to the novice after the debate, but also doing prefs for novices, which in many ways I actually find doing prefs for novices harder than doing it for varsity debaters, because there are so many like horror stories that I hear from our novices about this judge made me want to cry, etc., which is a little bit different. Like I don't really have to think about how nice a person is or if they care about novice debate when I'm doing varsity prefs. But I have to when I'm thinking about like novice prefs. So being able to have that written information is good for both teaching, but also for like intel on how to rearrange preferences for future tournaments.
I want to make clear one thing. If I could have long oral RFDs and that box check, which is like you must have 50 characters for every ballot and it's not accepted, and you can't do like oral RFD given, period, right? I'm in a happy place.
All right, so we are at 8 o'clock now, but if there are any other like questions or things people wanted to put out there, I don't think anyone would complain. So leave it open for like 5 seconds.
Smarta seems like she wants to say something.
You're just soaking it all in.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to what I hope is one of our first, I guess, development lectures on different topics, hoping to keep doing this. So if there are any ideas for panels for the next year that you think would be helpful for the college policy debate community, feel free to let me know and we can start putting them on the schedule. All right, thank you all.
Bye.